Welcome back, my friends, to TFT Hyperroll. Final reminder, state of Hyperroll video, linked up above. It's important because it's because of that video that this video exists, and a comment by William Coombs Comedy, I hope I'm saying it right, who first off said that they are interested in a Hyperroll tournament. If you are, go back to that video, the one that I linked earlier, and leave a comment there, although right now I don't think there's enough people to even make it a thought. Anyway, they want to show a video where there's a transition from a strong board to a 5-cost carry board. They also wondered how far I could climb without using traits, just strong units. Let me answer the second question first. I can't. I cannot figure out how to do that with just strong units. Every time I have tried it, it is just a disaster. Now, transitioning. That's not my usual playstyle, but I'm happy to try it, and this was my first attempt at really focusing on trying to build a strong early board, with the sole concept being I want to transition to a 5-cost board at the end of the match. So naturally, I'm going to start with Rapid Fire Guardians because it's going to carry you towards the end of the game. Now, one of the big differences is going to come in the augments, well, I guess to some extent, but normally I am building towards making the comp that I am making as strong as possible. So it would be Partial Ascension because that's a fantastic build for Guardians Rapid Fire. However, this will give me more gold down the line because I can just keep selling that 2-cost unit unless it gave me one I really liked. So I'm more apt to go for that if I'm thinking of ultimately dumping this team. And I debated with skipping over these early fights, but instead I just put it on 2.5 times speed, so they'll go through quickly, but you get the idea. The reason I chose Rapid Fire Guardians is it's a very strong start build, and you're likely to win early. You want to get into the late game with as much health as possible, so you have time and ability to transition. Now, a really interesting item choice, and this changes things. Normally, I would not get a spatula. I would go for the BF sword and look to just put damage on Jinx. But spatula will give me the ability to possibly use some traits later on when I'm trying to transition over to 5 costs. And while Rapid Fire Guardian isn't the only one you can use to kind of get this kind of start in a game, it's the one I've found the best, at least for me, because I know it really well. But let's jump into our second set of augments. It's gonna be really hard to resist the crash test dummies, although I should have taken frequent flyer. I took the crash test dummies on a snap decision because I figured it would be great in any comp, but frequent flyer would have given me more rolls down the line when I really need them. But back to how I'm setting up, I was originally just going to put an Infinity Edge on Jinx, but decided to go with the True Damage emblem. I felt this would give me some advantage in being able to transition into Kiana towards the end, if I'm able to get her, of course. This is another comp you can definitely use. Superfan Emo Annie will give you a good start as well. This is kind of a battle. If my Jinx was better itemized, I probably could have won this, but at its current itemization, it was going to be a loss. And again, I'm going to admit I'm not very good at this because my primary focus has always been just building out a team. So I am still working on primarily building out the Rapid Fire Guardians team. Mumu becomes the central tank. We're still going to need a tank in a late game when we go to 5 cost, so I can transition off of Mumu at that time if necessary. And one of the keys in really trying to transition is just slamming items on champions you know you're going to give up. Ultimately, even though she's 3-star, Jinx is going to be out of there because I'm going to want a legendary headliner. Now, the last augment here is going to kind of mess things up a little bit for what I really wanted to accomplish. Ramping Withers was out because I wasn't doing that, but it is really hard to pass on Heroic Presence when I have 6 Guardians. I figure even as I transition, I can keep most of those Guardians, or some of them, enough to make that augment valuable. And it is also designed to help keep me strong throughout the entire match. So my ultimate hope here is to get into stages 9 and 10 with as much health as possible so I can try and pull off as much transition as possible. I'll tell you right now, this does not go exactly as I really wanted it to, but at least it's a starting point for future videos. And item choices are going to be critical because you're not necessarily choosing items for the champions that you have right now. You got to think about who you're going to get. Notice we've brought in Jin rather than additional rapid fires, which is what I would normally do, and we load up with Jin items, even though I don't like Jin as an overall champion. We can take Pantheon up to 3 stars, since lesser champion duplicators will not work on 5-cost units. Pantheon's probably going to stay for the whole game. And right now we've got 2 5-costs in, but I'm sorry, I just really don't like Jin. I know these items can ultimately transition to something else, but for a legendary 5-cost, he just feels so underwhelming. And even at 3 stars, I suspect he could lose a match. Time for an item choice, and the back line is pretty set, so we can go with Adaptive Helm, although that could adapt back and forth. We're also picking up any 5 costs you see, and as you also can see, we're trying to hold on to a lot of gold as we get later. Not necessarily 70, we'll roll down to 50, not because of econ, but just because that's a comfortable place to kind of wait and say, hey, we have some gold to roll down to later. And again, reason I chose Rapid Fire Guardians is they're likely to hold up really well as you're heading into stage 9 and 10. We're still at the top of the health charts. We have 3 more lives left in us, so we have a lot of room to work with. And this is Scuttle Puddle, so we get a lot of items. We've now brought in Kiana into the fight, so we want to give her some strong AD items. Ultimately, we're going to get rid of Kennen once we have a chance, but we have a true damage emblem, so Kiana will still get her bling bonus. Now we're stuck in a little bit of a quandary. We happen to roll a Yorick headliner. I already have 2 Yorick, so that's going to give us a really nice jump on potentially creating a gold 3-star Yorick, so it's going to be really hard to pass up. After this round, we're going to go ahead and make this first swap. Well, after we pick up an item, which it's time to just grab a Sunfire Cape to tank up the front line a little bit more. Jinx is now out. Yorick is now in. But look, reality is I just don't like Jin. So we're going to go ahead and dump Jin and bring in Lucian. Then give Lucian some good Lucian items, what would have originally been on Jinx, and start giving Yorick a kind of mix between tankiness and some damage, so he gets the Sunfire Cape, the Guard Breaker, and the Hand of Justice. In my thinking, having Yorick as the headliner is going to give some advantage because we will still be able to make use of that Guardian augment that we picked up, as we can keep the Guardians on the board, but he's got a Mosher headliner trait, so we're now ticking Mosher, but it's just for Yorick. But either way, we're now into the top 4 and looking for more 5s to transition to, which then leads us to this. We can pick up a Rapid Fire Lucian, but we've already itemized a 2-star Lucian. But we're going to go ahead and do it and put 2 Lucians in our team with a mix of different items, and then bring in a 2-star Jin, even though I find him generally useless, but it probably won't be that bad. And we've got our final ish items. I say ish because we now have a 2-star Kiana, so she can steal items for us. I had 2-starred the Yorick, but I had one on the board, so decided to just pull him out. Then we're going to go ahead and give the other Lucian the Last Whisper, pick up a Last Whisper, and give it to Jin, who is now hanging out in the backline. We now really need to find ways to work in more of these 5 costs where they make sense. I'm not wanting to just dump the 6 Guardian right now because that is holding the team together, especially with the Guardian augment. I only really want to make that shift if I can get additional 2-star legendaries like Illaoi, who will now be able to replace a Guardian. But having 2 Lucians, one on each side, yeah, that's pretty strong. We now brought in Alawi to replace Kennen because Kennen was just an additional third true damage. We don't really need him, and we're starting to pick up Kiana items, so we tanked up Yorick a bit more. On the bench, we now have a second 2-star Yorick, and we have an additional Lucian, so we are 2 Lucians away from potentially having the gold 3-star Lucian, which would just sort of end the game entirely. But we're still doing pretty well from where we are right now, continuing to win. Now, in between rounds, I saw the opportunity to maybe get a 3-star Lucian because I was 1 away, so I sold that second 2-star Yorick, and I'm now sitting on the 2 Lucians on the board and then 2 on the bench. But the team isn't quite what I'd like it to be because we've now lost our 6 Guardians, and we don't have enough power behind it to back it up. So now this really all comes down to Gary and whether he's willing to help me out here. And at this point, it's time to start dumping everything and say the only thing that can save me is the gold 3-star Lucian. And there it is. Then we can just pick up anything and do anything with it because we've seen Lucian before and what he can do to an opposing team, and I feel bad because they have a gold 3-star Viego and likely thought, yeah, I got this, but you don't got this because Lucian's gonna clean house and it's GG for everyone. This was attempt number 1. I will try to do better in the future and work on doing this for future videos. Hope you enjoyed it, and as always, have an absolutely awesome day.